Welcome to the Election Truth Hour. I'm Joe Condit, your host, founder of CatholicSpeakers.com, and we are so excited to have you all join us tonight. We have thousands and thousands of people from all over the country tuning in, and we have three of the most prominent pro-life leaders on the stage today that were willing to join us on the generosity of their own time to give us influence and inspire us about supporting life during this, the most important election, in my opinion, of my lifetime. The purpose for tonight is easy. We're after all Christian leaders of any organization, and hopefully you influence your members to join us tonight to learn from these presenters that we have tonight, talking about the importance of pro-life, getting you informed, getting you past all the what has come to be a common term, fake news, getting the facts, getting you out to voting, getting your members out to vote, and teaching you tricks on how to motivate others to vote. Also, what you can do beyond the vote. It is more important than ever than all of us as Christians go and support life at the polls this year. We are live, so please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. It was my decision to go completely live, which makes it more exciting. I like to be a risk taker, but also gives you an opportunity of friends at home to ask questions live with our presenters, which there'll be a live question and answer after each session. So please make sure that you chat your name down below into the chat box where you can ask questions, which we will field and make sure that we answer as many as we possibly can. I want to thank our sponsors, CatholicSpeakers.com, InspireWord.com, and Charity Mobile. Big sponsor. We love them. If you don't are familiar with Charity Mobile, please visit them tonight. It's a pro-life cell phone company where they donate proceeds or a portion of your bill to your favorite pro-life charity. That's Charity Mobile. So definitely check them out. They've been supporting pro-life since '96 and have donated millions to pro-life charities. A disclaimer, we are all here tonight on our own accord as individuals. I'm here tonight as Joe Condit, as well as the presenters are here tonight as themselves, representing themselves. Why that is important is we're going to do everything we can and respect those that are joining tonight that are major leaders of 501c3s to make sure that they comply with the stipulations that they have to stay in line with. And we're happy and going to do our best to make sure we do so, to respect that. We'd like to bring in our first guest tonight, Jeannie Mancini, if we could bring Jeannie on. Jeannie is the president of March for Life, Education and Defense Fund. She attracts over 500,000+ people every year to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. In my opinion, in most opinions, it's probably one of the leading organization that brings the most people together in one congregation at one time every year. Tonight, she's going to talk about an overview of the March for Life to get everyone watching a much deeper background. She's going to talk about the theme that they just released for this upcoming year and what's surrounding that and how that ties in with the upcoming elections. And then also she's going to help us understand and talk specifically to Christian leaders, other Christian leaders, on what they can do now in between the election and how they can support life. Jeannie Mancini, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to have a few minutes to be able to speak at this most critical crossroads, I would say, in our culture. So I am just going to start by talking a little bit about the March for Life. If I could see all of you in person right now, I would ask by show of hands, how many of you have been to the March for Life? And I'm pretty sure almost all of the hands would be raised. If by chance there are any of you that are watching that haven't been to the March for Life, consider yourself personally invited. We will be marching in person this year. And I'm excited. Even tomorrow, we have our first National Park Service meeting preparing for 2021 March for Life. It's January 29th this year. Of course, many of you may know the history, but the reason that the march began was a terrible Supreme Court decision. Roe versus Wade, actually two terrible Supreme Court decisions, Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton. They both came down from the Supreme Court on January 22nd, 1973. I thought as we're facing this very interesting moment in history with regard to Supreme Court nominees and nominations, it would be good to share just a little bit about that decision as we mourn the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And even though she and I had very different judicial philosophies, I respect her greatly, and I am praying for her family and the repose of her soul. But as we mourn her, let's go back and look to see what she had to say about Roe versus Wade. So this is a woman who, worked for the ACLU and declared even in her confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court that she was very pro-abortion. She said that Roe v. Wade was a heavy-handed judicial intervention that was difficult to justify and it was not the way the courts generally work. That was in her comments to law school students from the University of Kansas. So, of course, these terrible decisions many thought would be corrected very quickly because they're outside of the parameters of what the Supreme Court is called to do. And so our founder, Nellie Gray, and many other like minds, I just spoke to one yesterday, Eileen Vogel from outside of Chicago, gathered and came up with this plan to essentially draw a line in the sand at the very first March for Life. They thought there would be, one, maybe two, maybe three marches. They didn't anticipate that these terrible decisions would remain on the books for as long as they have. So that first march, of course, was in 1974, January 22nd. There were about 20,000 people. They gathered at the Capitol. It was a sunny day, I understand, which is different than normal. That week in January that we march is typically one of the two coldest, historically speaking, weeks of the year in Washington, D.C. every year. So I don't think we've had that warm of a day since then. But it's a bit of a pilgrimage if you've ever been. And there's a bit of a tension between the somber reality of what we're there for. I mean, abortion is obviously the human rights abuse of today. We've lost over 63 million Americans to abortion. We live in a culture of walking wounded, right? And yet, the predominance of young people are so hopeful, and they know that social justice begins in the womb. And they're just so joyful in carrying the banner of this most critical human rights issue. And so there is a contagious joy, even though there is a very somber reality to why we're marching. And the young people really make the march. And guess what? So, Nellie, Eileen, those folks, they didn't expect the march to go on so many years. And here we are coming into our 48th annual March for Life. It's hard to believe this year. And we've become the largest annual human rights demonstration around the world. It's truly remarkable to consider how many people come in and shut down our nation's capital every single year, and lives are changed because of that. We hear so many testimonies of the marchers themselves who come to the march. They are changed by just being there and hearing the testimonies, etc. But other people are changed. Maybe some of you have heard the wonderful story of the then head of NARAL Pro-Choice America, Nancy Keenan, who was coming into Union Station around noon on a March for Life day, and she was blown away by the young people in Union Station and the signs, the positivity, the joy. They were just overflowing with joy. And she decided that day to quit her job. Of course, NARAL was the legal architect of abortion in America, and she thought that they had a marketing issue, that they weren't marketing to the young people well enough. But the truth of the matter is, we know that they have an issue with their product. It's not so much that their communications shop needs an overhaul. But she quit, and now NARAL Pro-Choice America has someone a little bit younger leading them, but she's still marketing, as we know, an intrinsically flawed and really terrible thing, abortion. Abortion divides, as we'll get to in our theme. So that's a March for Life. I've been there since 2012 when our founder, Nellie Gray, went to her peaceful repose. And we have 9 staff. We have a 501c3, a 501c4. Joe mentioned the limitations of a C3. So at the March for Life, neither our C3 nor C4 ever endorses a political candidate, but we educate, educate, educate. And that's why I'm here today, because this election is critically important. And for those of you, if there's anyone out there who's ever thought maybe your vote doesn't matter, I'd like to share just a personal story that I had in my career. I had the opportunity to work within the Office of the Secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services. And the timing of such was that I was there at the end of the George W. Bush administration. And because I was not a political appointee, I was also there at the beginning of the Obama administration. So let me share with you that if you think your vote doesn't count in terms of, the administration and different decisions that they make, you couldn't be more wrong. Policy decisions are made from the top, but whether it's a press release that everyone's going to read or a much more important policy document, whether it's the decisions about personnel appointments at very important jobs, whether it is the funding mechanisms, the kinds of programs that are going to be funded, or the kinds of groups that will be funded, every single aspect of government is, there is a policy aspect to it. And when you have a pro-family, pro-life administration in the White House, you are going to see that lived out through every aspect of government. And the reverse is true. And that's actually why I left the office of the secretary to go work then for the Family Research Council to do pro-life public policy. So I just want to reiterate the critical nature of this historical election. I mean, gosh, we've never been through a time like this. And folks, every vote matters. I think every rosary matters. I'm holding mine right now. For those who are Christian and not Catholic, please, just all of us, we need to come together united in this. We need to be praying and fasting because this is just a spiritual battle, in my opinion. And so we all really need to get out there to vote. Now, speaking of spiritual battles, one of the things that I've found working for the pro-life movement is that we can be divided, sadly, sometimes. It shouldn't be the case because we are working together for the single most important human rights issue of today, but we are divided and sometimes even competitive, which is just really unfortunate. Our theme for the March for Life this year is like the opposite of that, and it's our goal and our hope and our prayer that we can all come together. Our theme is strong together strong, life unites. Together strong, life unites. So the truth of the matter is we know that abortion divides. Abortion divides mom from dad. Abortion divides mom and dad from baby. Abortion divides siblings. Abortion divides women from getting the support they need. It divides a dad from, living out the fullness of his fatherhood. Abortion divides the scientific reality, from when life actually begins. And truly, abortion, I believe, and I'm sure all of us on this call believe, divides a world from love. Life unites. And when all of us can come together, we are much stronger. There is a beautiful quote from Mother Teresa. I'll paraphrase it. You can do what I cannot do. I can do what you cannot do, but together we can do great things. And so that is really the spirit of the March for Life theme this year. We need to all come together and put aside any kind of philosophical differences to fight this grave human rights abuse. And I feel that for the election as well. So with that, Joe, I think I'll hand it back to you and just thank you again for this opportunity.
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions for you, Jeannie, if you don't mind. They're
Sure.
coming in from the platforms. We're fielding one, which asked, what was Nellie Gray's viewpoint or her perception in the end of it all with the Roe v. Wade case?
Oh, Nellie wanted to overturn Roe, no question. She was very well known for saying the no exceptions, no compromise. She was not what I would describe as an incrementalist at all. And she had such a passionate fervor. So I'd encourage you to get on our March for Life website. We got this beautiful video made of her just commemorating her after she passed away. And it's got a great quote saying, "We'll be here until Roe v. Wade overturns, and we're not going away." And it's so passionate. You get chills, up your spine and tears in your eyes to watch it. So you can hear from her yourself.
Another question, how would you motivate young voters, especially those on the fence, to consider supporting life at the polls this year?
I think I personally would ask them what's holding them back, and then I'd share with them my own experiences, as I shared earlier, about what happens when you vote pro-life and the difference that it can make in building those policies. It actually does save lives. I think, again, sometimes we feel so far removed from the process, but having been a person who's worked in DC, who knows the difference that a call to your congressman or senator makes, and they make a difference, and who knows, the difference that a text alert or something like that makes on the White House. It is just so important. And it's also our Christian responsibility to be engaged in the political process, right? Just from a theological perspective, we're trying to live as God's created us to live and to sort of like return the world to him, so to speak, in his design. And so we can't shirk away from those responsibilities. We're in the world, but not of it. But to be in the world, we have to fully be in the world and engage these processes.
Jeannie, we're getting a couple questions about the theme again of the March for Life. And I don't think, not that I don't think, but a lot of people may not know the way to remember it being on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Could you again talk about why you chose the theme and also kind of go into maybe a little bit more about the March for Life this year in DC and encouraging people to join?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing, if you'd like to hear more about our theme, we had a webcast and you can get online and watch it. It's just a little over an hour and it was all about the theme. on September 10th was that. So it's just a little bit less than a month ago, marchforlife.org. But let me say this. So every year, the March for Life tries to discern a theme that we think is the most cutting edge need for the pro-life world. Because what happens with the March for Life is everyone comes together and it allows a springboard for communicating and educating. And so, in the past, we've had themes along the lines of pro-life is pro-science, where we've talked about what we know about when life begins, just the science behind that. We've had themes basically about what it means to be pro-life and pro-woman, to be pro-woman doesn't mean to be pro-choice. And we've gone very much into that. One year, one of my favorite themes was adoption, a noble decision, because there's this disparity between women who choose abortion in terms of numbers and women who choose adoption every year. So we have about 20,000 infant adoptions in the country versus nearly 1 million abortions in the country. And so there's, this huge bridge that could be gapped for women who are facing an unexpected pregnancy if they can receive the support and services to choose life and choose adoption. That's such a noble and beautiful thing. So those have been the kinds of themes we've had in the past. This year, the theme again is Together Strong, Life Unites. And there's a few aspects of it. I'll just restate a few things. So the first is just that each of us is given a unique mission, and there is a way in which every single one of you out there has a mission that you're called to and that no one else can do just the way that you can. But when we come together, we're sort of the strong, armor together, the strong kind of fence linked together that can't be, broken open, so to speak. So that's one important part of it, that we each are unique and we come together, and when we're all together in our uniqueness, we're much stronger. That goes back to that Mother Teresa quote, you can do what I can't do, I can do what you can't do, together we can do great things. The second part of it is that abortion itself is divisive. It's disintegrating. It's the opposite of uniting and unity. And so life unites. So there's that whole aspect of abortion dividing mom and dad, mom from baby, families from culture, love from reality, etc. So abortion divides, life unites. And check out our website for all of the details. We have an app, but the march again is January 29th. We will march in person. We will have some virtual ways that people will be able to march this year as well, given the environment. But we absolutely anticipate a big and very important march, depending on how the election goes, either way.
Jeannie, we're so excited to hear that the march is going to happen and we're all going to get together again and rally around such a great cause. We're down to the final minute here. I apologize to everyone that flooded us with questions. We just did a random selection, so we're not choosing anyone over anyone, but the winner tonight is Debbie Brooks. So Debbie, thanks for your question. And Jeannie, we have two questions in one for you. First, a lot of people wanted to know how many people actually showed up for 2020 who marched the march. And then Debbie Brooks's question is it true that if the Supreme Court overturns, then it goes to the states? So if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, then does it go to the states to make that decision? And what's that process?
Yeah. So how many people came to the march? We don't actually know. We know it's hundreds of thousands. We don't have an official crowd count. But I can tell you that every year it gets bigger just from anecdotally, like looking out at the crowd, you can't see the end of them. And of course, I should have mentioned, we had the very first president in the history of the United States speak at the March for Life this year, which was amazing. This administration has really leaned in. And I should just anecdotally, the president called me the day after the March for Life to tell me how much he enjoyed being there and to talk about how important the life issue was to him. And I wasn't expecting that. I got a random call out of the blue from President Trump to talk about the March for Life. So that was pretty cool. He had a great, great, great time. And it was wonderful, to hear him speak. Debbie, yes, the answer is yes to your question. If Roe were to be overturned, which personally, I don't see that happening immediately. I see it getting more chipped away in the near future. But if it were to be overturned, yes, abortion goes back to the states, and then each state decides where they will stand on abortion. So it's not that if Roe is overturned, that abortion is illegal around the country. And I think some people have messaged that really strangely. And of course, we want that. I mean, that's what we work for. And we started because of Roe. At the same time, there's this tension in that culture is upstream of politics, and where the harder goal, and we're working for both, is making abortion unthinkable, where no one would want to choose abortion. But we have to work at both because they're both very important. The laws, the legal cases, and the hearts and minds. So we're out there working. But yes, if Roe were overturned, it would go back to the states. Great question.
Jeannie Mancini, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence tonight. Having someone like yourself participate, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. Thank you for inviting us into your living room and coming on live and braving the internet to give the truth. God bless you for everything you're doing over there at the March for Life.
Thanks so much. I hope you didn't hear my little dog snoring right behind me. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Well, that'll wrap up our first session there. Thank you for the questions that flooded in. We'll make sure we get out a forum where we can answer everyone's questions via the internet, the email list that you signed up for. So you'll be getting everything for your participation. Please, everyone, keep asking the questions, keep chatting us questions, because it's only going to get better as we continue to want to learn more and more about this issue as the election nears. Now let's bring in our next guest, a personal dear friend of mine, Teresa Tomeo. Teresa Tomeo tonight is our media expert. Just a little bit of background of the unbelievable accomplishments she's had in her career. She's a syndicated talk show host. She's an author of many books. She's a 30-year plus veteran in the media TV industry, 20 of those of which she was a secular reporter. So she has experience all over the gamut. Today you can hear her on Catholic Connection, which is her radio show you can hear on weekdays, produced by Ave Maria Radio, heard over 500 stations through EWTN. And Teresa, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, Joe, it's great to be here. I'm so excited. It was really cool to see Jeannie because I have the blessing, as you know, because we interviewed you and your partner, Joe Higgins, at Catholic Speakers at the March for Life last year. And I'm there every year interviewing Jeannie and seeing all the great pro-lifers. So God willing, we'll be there again in January, as Jeannie mentioned. I'm really excited about being here tonight. You were on the show with me today. And even more exciting when I did the readings, because, you know, God is so God. He's so awesome. And I always love to draw from scripture. And I go to the readings today, and they tie in directly to what we're talking about this evening in this phenomenal hour. And so here's what I want to do. I want to start out with a quote from Archbishop Chaput. He's now the Archbishop Emeritus of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He's one of my favorite teachers in the entire Catholic Church, writes about the culture, speaks about the culture, and is still doing a lot of writing, even though he's technically retired from his position as Archbishop. He said many years ago when he was doing a panel discussion on the media and the culture and actually voting, he said, we need to know how the media work so they don't work on us. And brothers and sisters, as it says in the first reading today from St. Paul's letter to the Galatians about St. Paul's conversion, he speaks of his conversion today in that first reading. The media do work on us. And I know because I was in the media, as Joe said, and they worked on me. So here's what I want to talk about tonight. And I'm going to try to get this done in 10 minutes. I'm Italian. I might go over, so just bear with me. I want to share my brief pro-life at the March for Life or reading my books. They are shocked to learn that I knew what I knew, but I knew zip, zero, nada. So I'm going to share my brief pro-life conversion and how the media played a role in me being so misled and so confused. I'm going to just raise a few questions and kind of answer them for you. Many of you I know are probably pro-life leaders watching this, and this is nothing new to you, but there may be some people tuning in who may be pro-life or trying to learn more about the topic that may not know just how much the media continue to hide from us and how the media, working in conjunction, hand in hand with Planned Parenthood and the pro-abortion industry, have been lying to us and especially selling women a bill of goods. Then I'm going to close after we look at a little bit about, if we have time, the dignity of women and connecting it to Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and what's happening with her right now and why she is such a great example for what we say in the Catholic Church as true feminism or the new feminism. I'll share some information on what's happening with her and the media. And then last but not least, as we wrap up the 10 minutes or so, give you just some steps to help you as a leader, as well as if you're not, even if you're not a group leader, but a concerned Christian on what you can do. You know, Matthew 10:27 says, shout it from the housetops for all to hear. And what we hear in terms of the truth of pro-life, it has such an impact and it can change hearts. Look, I change. If I can change, let me tell you, anybody can change. So please keep that in mind and continue to beautifully and lovingly shout the truth from the rooftops and the housetops. So my journey, I fell away from the Catholic faith at a very early age and was very gung-ho in my career. And even though I loved the Lord when I made my Holy Communion, I fell away from the church and got very much into broadcasting. And one of my first jobs as a radio talk show host, a public affairs host, and a newscaster here in my hometown of Detroit was to interview people on the issue of abortion because welfare abortions were up for a vote in Michigan. So it was my responsibility to bring in someone from the pro-abortion side and someone from the pro-life side. Back then, some 30 years ago, they actually attempted to get both sides of the story, go figure. And what I heard then shocked me. That is when God first started to work on my heart, because I had been in the media about 10 years at that point and still had little idea what abortion was all about, even though I said I was pro-choice, pro-abortion. The pro-life person was an RN. She was Catholic, a very strong Christian, Catholic Christian, but she didn't even mention her faith. She was just speaking specifically from the facts of the situation. Also in that interview was someone from NARAL, now called NARAL Pro-Choice America, as Jeannie mentioned. And so they each gave their side of the story in terms of, one saying why abortion was good, the other explaining why abortion was bad. And what the nurse said, Diane, and she's still a friend of mine, just rocked my world. She was talking about how women are not fully informed about the dangers of abortion, and that even one abortion could increase a woman's risk for pregnancy, for breast cancer greatly. That most abortion clinics that were independent were barely even regulated. That most women who have abortions are pressured to have an abortion. And, just going through my notes, there's so many things that I could tell you, but the bottom line is I was stunned. I didn't know this. And so I had to really dig deep, but I put it aside for a while because it was all about me and my career, and to the point where it almost cost me my marriage and, more importantly, my soul. I had to make a very long story short. If you want to read my testimony, get one of my books. It's a very long story. But I had to realize that God was in charge. And when I had my come to Jesus moments, was fired from a prominent position, I really had to look myself in the face and say, what have I done with my life? And why have I put God on the back burner? The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 1785 says, in the formation of conscience, the word of God is a light for our path. We must assimilate it in faith and prayer and put it into practice. Also examine our conscience before the Lord's cross, assisted by the gifts of the Holy Spirit, aided by the witness or advice of others, and guided by the authoritative teachings of the church. Okay? I did none of that in those days when I figured I had a really good decision and made a really good decision about abortion. I only consulted my personal opinion and a few of the other reporters in the newsroom or a few articles that I had read. But it's not about feelings or opinions. Our faith should stretch us. The Lord came to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And if we're not stretched, then that means that we're not really pushing in terms of getting closer to God. Paragraph of the Catechism 1787 says, man is sometimes confronted by situations that make moral judgments less assured and decisions difficult. But he must always seriously seek what is right and good and discern the will of God expressed in divine law. So I fell off my high horse, as St. Paul did, and I had my come to Jesus moments and had to say, okay, Lord, show me, teach me. And he showed me so much that I needed to learn about the abortion industry and about the truth of the dignity of the human person. So my first question for you tonight is, when you think about casting your vote, or if you're a leader, this is a good question to ask people in your prayer group or in your Bible study. Whom do you consult? What sources are experts? And do those sources include, hopefully, a good pastor or a priest, scripture, a great deal of prayer? And for Catholics, are you consulting the many documents and the Catechism of the Catholic Church? How much do you really know about the abortion issue? What if you found out, as I did, that much of what you have been told through the culture and sold through the secular media is the opposite of the reality of the situation? Roe v. Wade, as Jeannie mentioned, and Doe v. Bolton gave us abortion on demand through 9 months of pregnancy. And most of the candidates running for office who support abortion right now, all the way up to the top office of the U.S., do believe abortion should be legal through 9 months of pregnancy, regardless of what their faith is or they claim their faith is. How many of you are aware that the studies show a majority of women say they were pressured into abortion, nearly 2/3 of women, and that 84% say they were not given enough information before they were questioned about making that decision? We're talking a lot about the issue of racism with good reason, because it is a concern, a big concern, and we need to continue to address it. But how many people realize how racist the abortion industry is? That the majority of abortion facilities are located in places where the population is either Hispanic or African American, and that the majority of abortions are marketed and performed on women who are African American or Hispanic. And how many people know that Planned Parenthood and the other people in the abortion industry consistently fight for women to have more information, just to have an informed choice, just to know what they're getting into when they walk inside that abortion facility. You could get more information from your doctor to go in to have a tooth pulled when you would go into an abortion facility to get information on what's happening in their body. They fight ultrasounds. They fight limits in terms of abortions. Every single thing they fight, hook, line, and sinker, to keep abortion what they say is safe, legal, and rare, which is a big fat lie. And there are, as Jeannie said, since Roe v. Wade, some 63, I've heard as high as 67 million abortions since Roe v. Wade. Now, would you agree with me in terms of the media that Catholics and other voters deserve at least attempts at balance, right? If you're trying to form an opinion, yeah, you want to maybe look at a newspaper, listen to something, but don't you think that if you're watching those shows and reading those articles, that you deserve to have accurate information? Well, look, as Joe said, I worked in the media for half of my professional career. I saw it. I lived it. That's one of the reasons why I left. You are not getting accurate information. You are getting propaganda. Now, I cannot tell you for whom to vote, and what I'm about to say is not an endorsement for any candidate. This is just a fact about the media. 95% of the coverage of our current president by the secular media in the last year has been negative. Okay? Now, that is not news coverage. That is literally propaganda. It is just not possible if a reporter, if an outlet is doing their job, that 95% of the news about that particular person or that particular entity is going to be negative. It's not supposed to work that way. Reporters, media outlets are supposed to vet candidates, and they're supposed to treat the candidates fairly to make sure that they are asking tough questions for both sides. And that's not what's happening. And that's why the issue right now of abortion, including the upcoming confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, are not being covered accurately. We are being sold of goods as in propaganda for the left and for the Planned Parenthoods of the world. Father Frank Pavone, whom you're going to hear from in just a few minutes, always says that we won't stop abortion until we see abortion. I'll take that one step further. We won't stop abortion until we see abortion, hear about abortion, and read about abortion. But none of that is happening. Very little of that is happening because of the way the secular media, and the studies show this going back 30, 40 years, that the majority of those in the secular press lean to the left and staunchly support abortion. Now, in a perfect world, that shouldn't matter. Our opinions should not matter. We should be able to, as trained journalists, at least that's what I was taught when I was in J school many years ago, we should be able to go into a story and cover it and at least attempt to get both sides. That doesn't even happen anymore. As far as the media are concerned, their opinion, their view of the world has to be your view of the world. And if you don't have the same view, they're going to make you feel terribly about it, as we can see right now with the issue of abortion, as well as the upcoming confirmations hearings of Amy Coney Barrett. Isn't it interesting how the press present those people who call themselves Christian, whether they're evangelical or Catholic, and if they're, let's say, nominal in their faith, where they continue to go against core teachings of their faith, they're fine. It's okay to be a Catholic or an evangelical if you're wishy-washy or you don't take all that stuff seriously. But here you have Amy Coney Barrett, who is a serious Catholic. She's a mom. She's a wife. She takes life issues seriously. She's embraced her dignity as a woman. She is in the world, but not of the world. And she supposedly is doing everything that radical feminism says it was all about, right? You have to have a career and you have to be able to do this, that, or the other thing. She has been able to succeed while being a mom and while having a beautiful marriage. You know, pro-lifers are often always accused of only being pro-birth, as if that's a bad thing. We're not. We care from womb to tomb, and we have pregnancy resource centers that do so much for women who find themselves in crisis pregnancies. But here is Amy Coney Barrett, who is a faithful Catholic. She has 7 children, 2 of whom are adopted. She has a special needs baby. And it's obvious, as we heard from her confirmation or her acceptance speech during the nomination process when President Trump announced that he was nominating her, where she said that she couldn't do what she did without her husband because he's been carrying much of the load right now. Interestingly enough, radical feminists, and this is what I was fed, Joe, for some, 20 years when I was in the media, that if you want to have it all, it has to be all about you. Well, that's not what Amy Coney Barrett is showing us. She's showing us that you find yourself when you lose yourself in helping other people. Real quickly, just let me give a few pointers in terms of wrapping up what we can do to make sure that we're voting in line with our faith. Recommit ourselves to Christ. Jesus, I trust in you. Be humble enough to let go of what you think and see what God has to say. Consult Scripture. Love the Lord with your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your strengths. For Catholics, and I would say this for any Christian, the Catechism of the Catholic Church is a great resource for all Christians, especially Article 6 on moral conscience and forming one's conscience. Consult the authoritative teachings of the Church, the Gospel of Life, Living the Gospel of Life, Faithful Citizenship, the Papal Letter to Women, Mulieris Dignitanum by John Paul II. And I'll put together a list of all these resources for you. And when you are looking at media sources, choose them wisely. Go to Catholic sources, EWTN, Ave Maria Radio, Our Sunday Visitor, Catholic World Report, National Catholic Register. Not saying you shouldn't watch the secular media, but please, when you do watch the secular media, take it with a grain of salt. And remember, it's the 10 Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. I know I went a little bit over, but there's a lot on my heart tonight, and I just want to encourage people, do your homework, and especially take everything to the Lord in prayer. Joe, back to you in the studio, as we say.
Yeah, Teresa, God bless you. I'm so happy to have you here. It feels like you and I are just hanging on FaceTime like normal, just other people are watching now. Let me get right to the questions for you because your topic is hot. Sure. We have a question from Amanda Switch. Media narrative about abortion normally says that it helps current health. It prevents poverty. So overall, it helps everyone by controlling the population. That kind of mindset or that kind of narrative, your comments on that?
Well, I think it's a false narrative, first of all, because really when you're telling someone that the way to help a situation is by killing people, it's just quite frankly wrong and it doesn't make any sense. And also when you see the situations which many women are in, having an abortion doesn't really help them any because it causes so many other problems in their life. And as I mentioned that in terms of what the media are telling us about what happened. So it's totally a false narrative.
Next question we have from Jared Blank. Trump should not be able to appoint the current seat. True or false?
Well, I would say false, because if that's the case, then the Democrats shouldn't have did what they had done a few years ago, because when the shoe was on the other foot, they went full force with what they thought was necessary. And I think, elections have consequences, as our former president, Barack Obama, always said. And President Trump is in the White House. He's a commander-in-chief, and he wants to move forward with it, and so do the American people.
Got another question from Carol. Thank you for this. Carol, how can we get more media coverage on the March for Life? The mainstream media doesn't cover it, which is so true. Teresa, you and I are there every year. You have 500,000 plus easy people coming to this thing, and there's you don't see it anywhere. I mean, if you do, it's very sparse.
Well, it's interesting the last 2 years, because in the Trump administration, we had the vice president speaking at that first march after the election, and then we had the president after that. So the media were forced to actually cover it. That was the first time where we've seen additional coverage. So my suggestion would be to remind your legislators, your lawmakers, and especially people in very, very high positions to go to the March for Life, the pro-lifers, because that is when they're in a prominent position, the media are going to be forced to cover them, as they were with the president. Not as much as they would give something else, but they did have to be there. So I think that's changing a little bit. But again, we have to be our own reporters and get involved in social media, do events like we're doing tonight, and just tweet like crazy and have a social media storm and take advantage of the other outlets that are out there. And I think that if we just put enough pressure on them, it will continue to change. And again, I'm hoping with more leaders who are pro-life, if they go to the March for Life, and the media do have to come and cover them. They're just forced to because of the positions that they hold.
Right. Another question from Chris. Chris asked a really good one, Teresa. It kind of wraps all this together. With your experience, how can we convince people that the mainstream media news is not telling the truth?
Well, I think you just, again, you have to share stories like mine. There are so many of us who have left the secular media and are now working for outlets like Ave Maria, EWTN, the National Catholic Register, myself, Brian Patrick, Raymond Arroyo, the list goes on. And I think it's obvious in terms of, if you look at the statistics I gave you, do some research, do some homework. When you have, as I said, 95% negative coverage, anyone in their right mind would realize that whether it's, the president, the vice president, a senator, if you're giving a particular person 95% negative coverage, that shows you that it's propaganda and not truth. So do a little research. I have several books that I've written about this, including my very first book, Noise. And then I also have another book, Extreme Makeover, which deals specifically with the issue of abortion and contraception and the bill of goods that women have been sold, in particular, from the media bias.
Another question here from Kathy Casamano. Sorry if I butchered that. What is the best way to respond to Catholics who say abortion should not be the sole issue on how one should cast your vote?
Well, I think, as I said, they have to go to the church teachings. The bishops have said very clearly, and this was actually affirmed more than once by the Holy Father during the ad limina visits last year, that the abortion issue is the preeminent issue. And in terms of being one issue, you're also often accused, I'm sure, of being a one-issue voter. Well, you darn tootin' I'm a one-issue voter if that one issue affects everything. Let's say if someone, God forbid, were running for office and they said that they were for terrorism. No one in their right mind would vote for that person, right? Oh, they're a terrorist, and oh my goodness, we can't. So we remember 9/11, we remember the Oklahoma City bombing, we remember so many things that have happened to our world, horrible terrorist activities overseas, wherever that might be. People would say, no, that is so destructive. But again, getting back to Father Frank's quote, because we don't see the bodies, we don't think of it that way. Kristen Hawkins from Student for Life wrote a beautiful editorial a few weeks ago for the Federalist website. And she said, I interviewed her on it. We don't see those bodies. If we saw those bodies, when you're talking 63 million babies since Roe v. Wade, and you mean to tell me that that's not the issue? The reason the bishops and the church consistently has had this teaching on life being the preeminent issue is because it affects everything else. When you don't support the most vulnerable, everything else implodes. What matters if you're dead? And all of these different things that I talked about and how it affects so many people in so many different ways, not just the women, but society, it's not just one issue. It's the issue.
Amen, Teresa. We got a couple more questions here. We'll actually finish up with this one, which is actually a question from one of our fellow speakers, Paula Umana. She writes, as a bilingual Catholic, how do I have more pro-life influence on the Hispanic women?
Well, I think keep doing what you're doing. And I would also stress what's happening in the minority communities. I mentioned those statistics regarding African-American sisters and Hispanic sisters and how those communities are targeted and how Planned Parenthood has now been admitting of their racist and eugenicist past. And so I think it's really important to look at the numbers and to show what they're doing in these communities. And why aren't they providing real resources for women? Why is it that the pregnancy resource centers that are getting no money from the federal government are doing the really helping women from womb to tomb with volunteers and support, financial support just from people out there in the community, that they're not getting any attention? And these are the people who are really trying to make a difference. So try to really share with them what's happening and how this is really wiping out their community, the African American community and the Hispanic community, the two minority communities most affected by abortion.
Teresa Tomeo, thanks again for being with us. One last thing, we got a bunch of questions surrounding this topic. What are your personal suggestions on finding fair and balanced news? Maybe mention 2 or 3 exact ones that you might think might be a good place for people to start.
Well, I mean, I just want to remind folks that we really, and I'm really proud of what we do at Ave Maria Radio and EWTN and all of our outlets, because we have a lot of folks like myself that were in the secular media, are trained as reporters, and we do a really balanced job. And so Catholic News Agency, again, EWTN News Nightly is terrific. Al Creston and I do news every single day, AveMariaRadio.net. I love Raymond Arroyo's work. I think he's fantastic. So I would start with solid Catholic news sources. And then also, if you wanted to look at, I like the Wall Street Journal. I think they do a fairly decent job, especially in their opinion pieces. I like many of the programs on Fox News. I think they give people an opportunity from both sides of the aisle to speak, which I don't see on the other networks. So those are just a few suggestions I have.
Teresa, thanks again for joining us tonight. You just knocked it out of the park. Gave us a lot to think about. For those watching, you can find Teresa at CatholicSpeakers.com. Also listen to her every weekday on Catholic Connection through Ave Maria Radio. Teresa, any final words? It's lovely to see your face.
Just vote pro-life, because you know what? At the end of the day, we have to support the least of these, and we're all going to be held accountable. So vote life. I'm not going to tell you for whom to vote, but you got to vote pro-life.
Teresa Tomeo, our media expert, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're going to switch over to a quick rundown of if everyone could take the time to discern maybe making a donation. You can donate on the page there. If you go to CatholicSpeakers.com, then click on the home page, all the information there for the Election Truth Hour. It'll take you to the main page for the Election Truth Hour. There you can just make a simple donation. All proceeds are going to go to us getting pro-life speakers out into the public, like Teresa Tomeo, like Father Pavone coming up, like Jeannie Mancini, to get out there and inspire everyone and anyone we can reach to vote pro-life this upcoming election. The table has been set. We have an open seat, and traditionally one of the most pro-life presidents that's ever been in place. Next, we have the man behind this, the man that called me and asked me if I could help him get his word out about what he has dedicated his life to. Many would say Father Frank Pavone is the godfather of fighting for pro-life. He's an incredible man. He lives and breathes this every day. If you are watching this, now is the time to grab every single person in your household, every single person that you within shouting distance, and get them in front of your screen, because we are about to embark on a jam-packed session with Father Frank Pavone, who's going to debunk all of the media bias, all of the media hypocrisies, and get down to the brass tacks of what it is to vote pro-life, vote your conscience, and do what God put us on this earth to do. Father Frank Pavone is the most prominent figure, in my opinion, and pretty much everyone would agree, in the fight for life. He's the national director for the Priests for Life, which is the in Catholic America. He is the president of the National Pro-Life Religious Council, and also the national pastoral director of the Silent No More awareness campaign, as well as Rachel's Vineyard. Father Frank Pavone, I will just hand the baton over to you. It is your stage. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you for all the work you've done and everyone you're about to inspire.
Well, likewise to you, Joe, to both Joes that are behind CatholicSpeakers.com. I really want to encourage everybody to follow, support, and promote as much as you can CatholicSpeakers.com, because I knew that by reaching out to Joe Condit and Joe Higgins that this suggestion would bear fruit, that we wanted to get together with you. And I just thank all of you who are leaders of various groups, big and small. God bless you for what you're doing. Thank you, all the rest of you that are joining in, even if you're not leading a group. I know we have priests joining us tonight, and deacons and lay ministers. We wanted to come together with you for this time to give you practical things you can do for the next 4 weeks. The election day is 4 weeks from tonight. This is a very limited time that we have now. But brothers and sisters, in politics, 4 weeks actually is a long time. And in this remainder of this whole broadcast tonight, I'm going to give you inside information. I'm on briefings every single day with the Trump campaign and events with the RNC. I have lots of information to share with you, lots of resources. And let me just make clear that we meant for tonight to be the starting point of collaboration over the next 4 weeks. We have got to win this election, and we can and will send you supplementary materials via email. Those of you that have signed up for this broadcast, I'm going to send you all kinds of resources. We're going to work together with Joe in these next 4 weeks. We're ready to work directly with you, with your organizations, with your board of directors, with your team, with your social media, with anything and everything that you're doing to make sure that we can influence as many voters as we can. We all know we each have one vote, but we can each influence countless other votes. Now, you remember how close the elections of 2000 were. 537 people in one state, the state of Florida, where I'm speaking to you from right now, determined the whole presidential election. It can be the same way this time. Nobody knows how this election is going to turn out, but I can tell you that the polling that you're hearing is not accurate. Some inside information: when you look at the polling from within the campaigns, when you look at the polling that is not subject to media bias, President Trump is either tied or ahead or within the margin of error in the key states. Remember, we don't have a national election when we vote for our president. We have an electoral college. So national polls don't mean anything. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. National polls don't tell you anything. Somebody can be, 10 points ahead in a national poll and lose the election completely because we don't vote by national vote. We vote by electoral college, and therefore it's in the key swing states. And I'm going to tell you which ones those are. Let's start with looking at that because, again, this is practical. What influence can you have on the people within your group that are in, especially in these states? Now, the whole country matters because we're talking about the presidency. We're talking about 1/3 of the United States Senate. We're talking about the entire House of Representatives. And we're talking about governors, state legislators, and then down the ticket from there, all kinds of local races. Do you know that there are about 100,000 races that comprise elections 2020? 100,000 races. And every single one of them is important. So we need the whole country. But when we're talking about, let's look at the presidency and the U.S. Senate, let me give you some key states. And in fact, I'm going to do something here with your permission. I have a whiteboard here, so we're going to switch camera shots, and I'm going to be able to show you some of these things because I know that many of you will be taking notes, and looks like you can see this pretty well. Okay, so for the presidential race, what states are going to make the biggest impact here? Okay, so if you think geographically, let's start up in the Northeast. Okay, we're going to talk about Maine. We're going to talk about New Hampshire. We're going to talk about coming down to the Southeast. We're going to talk about Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. Okay, we've got Pennsylvania going more west slightly now. Ohio, middle, upper Northwest. We're talking about Michigan. Minnesota is in play. Wisconsin. And then you go out further west, down in the Southwest, we're looking at Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. Let me throw in here in the middle of the country here, Iowa. Okay, so for the presidential race, brothers and sisters, if your groups have particular presence or influence in these states, we have to push extra hard to get people to the polls, registered and to the polls for the presidential race. Okay, and again, I'm going to send you follow-up notes. You're going to have all of this, and you're going to be very well equipped. That's for the presidential race. Now let's go to the U.S. Senate. I know I'm going fast. The U.S. Senate is key. We have right now a pro-life Republican majority in the Senate. But look, the golden ideal goal here is 60 votes. 60 votes. Right now, there's a 53 vote majority, but we need, you know why we need 60? Because of the legislative filibuster. People are wondering, why is Planned Parenthood not totally defunded? It's largely defunded. The president has taken a lot of action to do that, but it's not completely defunded because things get blocked in the Senate. Things get blocked in the Senate even when we have a majority. You got to break the filibuster with 60 votes. So when we have an opportunity to do that, most pollsters will say, well, you know, it doesn't look like that's where this election is heading. But listen, we got 4 weeks. if we really push on the gas, if we really start doing the kind of things we're talking about here tonight, we've got to think big. We can get to a 60-vote margin in the Senate. Now, where are some of the key Senate races where we are able to pick up some seats for the Republican Party, which is, in fact, right now the only pro-life party that is in power? Okay, so we're talking about Alabama. We're talking about Iowa. Now, some of these you'll see intersect and overlap with the presidential states. Some don't. We're talking about North Carolina. We're talking about Georgia, which this time has 2 Senate seats. Both of their U.S. Senate seats are on the ballot this year. We're talking about Montana, Michigan. These are some of the key Senate states, not the only ones. Not the only ones. There are others too. Arizona, another key one. U.S. Senate, you got influence in these states. You're in these states. You can send special messaging to your people in these states about the Senate races. This is what counts. And then, of course, we've got to take back the House. My goodness. You talk about wondering why there isn't more, not only pro-life legislation, but on all kinds of issues. Why isn't there more progress? The House of Representatives is key to win it back. And congressional districts all across the country, sometimes even in very blue states like California, New York, New Jersey, there's districts that are very, very movable here, and move them from a pro-abortion Democrat to a pro-life Republican position. And again, a lot more detail, of course, we would have to go into here. I won't go congressional district by district. But just to say, let's not forget about the importance of the House. And this is one of the reasons why, again, the whole country matters. Now, President Trump won in 2016 in what many said was a miraculous election. It was certainly historic. Nobody was, certainly in the mainstream political analysis expecting this victory to happen. Do you know what happened? Do you know why the polls were so wrong? Because polls, if they're good, which a lot of them aren't because they just ask opinions of, adults across America. Well, that doesn't mean anything for the outcome of an election. Even if they ask just registered voters, plenty of registered voters don't vote. Or if they ask likely voters, you have to ask who a poll is asking. You ask likely voters, then you got to now you're getting a little bit closer to the truth, but your sampling has to mimic the actual population. If you oversample, in other words, ask more Democrats proportionally to the Republicans that you're asking the poll question to, and you oversample the Democrats vis-a-vis how they are proportionately in the overall electorate, then the Democrats going to be ahead when they're not really ahead. So this is why a lot of the polls are wrong. But even when you get the best poll sampling the likely voters, do you know why they were so wrong in 2016 and why a lot of them are wrong right now? Very simple reason. President Trump attracted the unlikely voters. And that was the difference. There were 6 million voters who came out in 2016 to vote for the president who either had never voted before or hadn't voted in a decade or more. Think about that for a moment. And in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, the president won by very small margins. And when you put those numbers together, well, it was less than 100,000. So these 6 million people brought him over the finish line. These were the unlikely voters. And let me explain to you why he attracted them. And this is one of the reasons why, people ask me, well, how come you're such a supporter of President Trump? Or they'll say, how can you be such a supporter of the president? Let me explain to you the philosophy of Phyllis Schlafly. And many of you know who she was. Catholic woman, one of the founders of the conservative movement in this country. She's since gone home to the Lord, but I was privileged to know her and strategize and work with her for a number of years. And Phyllis was one of the early endorsers of President Trump. And you know what she said? She said, we can see that there are a lot of issues that we would have to educate him on. He may not be understanding all the issues of the pro-life or the conservative movement. But here's why I'm supporting him, she said. Because he will listen to us, to the grassroots? Why is this a man who actually comes to the March for Life instead of just writing a letter or making a telephone call? Why does he actually come? He's connected with the people. Phyllis said he'll listen to us, and not to whom? The establishment. He won't. He's not owned by them. He's not bought by them. He doesn't feel beholden to them. In fact, he believes that they're part of the problem. And so many of the American people also believe that they're part of the problem. That's why they said, hey, this man talks our language. Now, some people say, oh, I don't like the way he talks. He's rough around the edges. I don't like the way he tweets. Listen, is that really what this is about? Is that really what this is about? I would prefer to have a president whose tweets I don't like than whose judges I don't like. We have got to train our people to think bigger and say, look, is it really about, the tweets or the way that he's talking? Or is it about decisions that your great-grandchildren are going to be reading and are going to be affected by 40 years from now, handed down by Trump-appointed judges on essential matters of life, morality, freedom? Isn't that what counts? What direction our country is going? We got to get people to think beyond personalities. And he does. And he listens to the grassroots. He's not beholden to the establishment. And that's why she said he's going to be loyal to us. He's going to fight for us. See, that's another thing. People say, well, sometimes it's, a little bit of a rough attitude that he's got, name calling and a little bit of a rough personality. Well, you know what? First of all, you look at the kind of opposition that he has. If you don't fight back, you're just going to be bulldozed right over. But he's fighting back for us. A lot of times, even pro-life candidates and presidents of the past, when they were attacked by the left or by Planned Parenthood or by whatever kind of radical forces there are in this country or the media, a lot of them they were quiet, they were passive, they just roll over and don't say anything, and let's just be nice. This is a man who fights back for you, for me, for us, for the church, for the unborn, for America, and wins. So I'll take a little bit of roughness in the personality along with that, because our strengths are our weaknesses, right? And this is the fighting spirit that he demonstrates. This year, we can expect more people voting than ever before. 2016 broke a record. There were 136 million people that voted. This year, we can expect 160 million, maybe even more, because the intensity now is so strong in this country about this election that I think this was one of the predictions I heard from political experts, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes even above that. Tragedy is that so many who are registered don't vote. Now, I'm talking about in the tens of millions. And a lot of these people, the reason we wanted to gather you together here tonight is that a lot of these people who aren't voting are people that listen to you. We ran our list, and this is one of the things you can do, and of course we're in a very short time period now, but just to illustrate the context in which we're working, we ran our list through against the voter files, and we found that even on our list of pro-life activists, 40% of them or so didn't show up on the voter files. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not registered, because there might not be a data match, but it means they might not be. Same thing in your group. Don't presume that people are registered to vote. Now, right now, we're in a period of time where voter registration is closing. Okay, we just had, in fact, here in Florida, we just had an extension of our voter registration deadline, which was yesterday. It got extended an extra week. But voter registration is closing right now. In some states, it's too late. And by the way, so you can go to state, this is one of the many websites we've set up for you, statevotinginfo.org, to see the dates. Now, one of the things you can do is send out an email to the people on your list in a particular state. This is completely a nonpartisan activity, perfectly allowable, and say, hey, in your state voter registration is closing up in 4 more days. Make sure you're registered to vote. And that's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Remind the people. Because you know what gets voters out to the polls more than anything else, political analysts will tell you? That somebody that they trust said something to them. Somebody that they know and trust. And if you run an organization or a ministry and you've got people following you, they know you, they trust you. If they hear it from you, it's not the same as if they hear it from a candidate or a campaign or a political party. They may indeed hear it from those sources, but when they hear it from you, hey, it's important to register, it's important to get out and vote, that's what will get them off the dime and actually into the game. So voter registration is closing, and at the same time, now some states have it right up until Election Day, but again, you have to check your individual state. Other things that's happening right now is early voting is starting. Do you know that over 8 million people have already either cast their vote in this election or have had the opportunity to do so probably by now, more like 10 million? Early voting is already, the election's already underway. There's not an election day anymore. It's election season. So right now, again, at this same place, you'll see whether early voting has started in your state. You may well know that already, or you can simply check your state election website, the links to which are also on this site. Early voting is underway. So now's the time. One of the practical things we may want to do is group voting. Now, what I mean by that is make it fun, make it encouraging, make it easy. You know, the places where you go for early voting, if your state has in-person early voting, are different very often than the usual polling place. Research it, find out, offer to bring people to the polls together, make a day out of it. You know, have lunch together and then go vote together. It can encourage people, especially if you do that on election day. You know, a lot of people, it makes it easier to wait in a long line if you're there with friends and fellow pro-lifers, and see what you can do to anything we could do to encourage, and it makes people easier to get to the polls, and they don't have to worry about finding parking. If you carpool, doing these things together is a very helpful way of getting this done. This year, we have to worry about voter fraud. There's a lot of nonsense going on. And one of the things, therefore, is that if you request a ballot and you mail it in, okay, fine. You request it, you sign it, you tell them, hey, this is me. You've got the right person here. But verify your ballot. Once you mail it in, give us some time, and then check with your Board of Elections and make sure your vote got counted. And if they can't verify that it has been counted, then you can go and see what the rules are in your state. But often you can go and you can cast a provisional ballot that says, hey, in case my mail-in ballot was lost somehow, I want to make absolutely sure my vote counts. And you can go in and you can do it that way. Now, let me go back to the chair here and give you the next few things I want to say here. All right, so this gives you a lot of introductory information. Now, look. One of the things that we've got to do is we've got to make this an election that focuses on policies, not personalities. It's got to focus on accomplishments, not accusations. So many people, and again, specifically, we ask for a lot of Catholic leaders to come on this call, and I know others here are leaders of Christian ministries of other denominations. Let's understand something about our own people. First of all, if you're evangelical, your vote is the base vote right now for the Republicans and for the president. It's the base. They're counting on you. They know that the majority by which you voted for the president and other Republican candidates is far, far stronger and larger by proportion than it is in the Catholic community. In the Catholic community, it's basically split down the middle. President Trump won 52% of the Catholic vote in 2016. Meanwhile, the previous two elections, President Obama got the larger portion of the Catholic vote, but not by a lot. We're talking about a few percentage points here and there. Now, whether a person goes to church influences this. Those that go to church tend to be more likely to vote for pro-life Republican candidates than those who don't. That's an interesting dimension of the statistic too. But the point I'm making here is that now we've got a Catholic candidate running for president. There is nowhere in the catechism, nowhere in the documents of the church that it ever says a Catholic should vote for a Catholic. It doesn't say that anywhere. That's not a criterion for how you vote. Any more than, you choose your auto mechanic that way, or your real estate agent. I mean, you choose someone who's going to be the best one to do the job, right? I mean, even a doctor, we know there's implications, for Catholic physicians and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody says to you, Dr. So-and-so is the best for the type of surgery you need, aren't you going to choose him or her, no matter what their religion might be? Absolutely. So it is, for voting, the same thing. Nothing says you vote for somebody because they share your religion. In fact, the Constitution says just the opposite. There's no religious test for public office. No, the question has to be, can the person do the job? Now, I want to read for you here a list of accomplishments. I want to mention another website, prolifepresident.com. That's another. I want to ask you to do something, brothers and sisters. I want to ask you to go to prolifepresident.com. You'll see various listings of the president's accomplishments. Now, there's a special link for accomplishments from a Catholic perspective. Now, why is this important? Because I hear Catholics saying all the time, oh, I'm not going to vote for him because, he sinned in the past. Yeah, well, so did St. Paul, and so did King David, and so did Moses. And Winston Churchill, and, President Abraham Lincoln, and General George Patton, personality-wise, and personally, people said a lot of bad things about them and didn't like them very much. Doesn't matter. God puts the right person in the right position at the right time to get the right job done. Now, let me just go through a little litany here. And again, I'll make this available to you. It's right at prolifepresident.com. But listen to this. First of all, the president, you see, I have his picture behind me when I do my broadcasts from here every day. And people ask me, how come you have his picture there? I said, well, because first of all, he's the president of the United States. But secondly, if he weren't where he is, we wouldn't be where we are, because Priests for Life, together with many other ministries and dioceses and universities and businesses, had to fight the Obama-Biden administration all the way to the Supreme Court to stay in existence, because they were trying to force us to violate our faith. But with the HHS mandate, right, include some forms of abortion in your health insurance. We said, no, not going to do it. Biden, now we went to the Supreme Court. We won only because of President Trump's election. He exempted us all from that mandate. Biden said he'll put it back. So the choice here is between the freedom of the church, the freedom of you to do your ministry, or the oppression of the church. Even just on that point alone, of course, we know pro-life, okay, the state just can't authorize the killing of a baby. John Paul II said that makes it a tyrant state. That's hardly just one issue. It's a tyrant state. But putting that even to the side, the freedom of the church. I mean, well, what's going to happen? What does Biden think is going to happen? To reimpose that mandate? You're going to send all these ministries right back up to the Supreme Court? Free speech. Children praying in school. Students on campuses speaking their mind. Clergy preaching in the pulpit. Do you know that the president has taken executive action on all these things to increase our freedom to spread the word of God? Coronavirus, he has done an immensely historic job. What we have to do is we have to go to sites like whitehouse.gov and get the facts. Look at the coronavirus plan. There was just a report issued from Congress on the entire plan and how it has unfolded for the safety of Americans and our health, and the safe and swift reopening of our economy, our churches, and our schools. Immigration. Catechism says, welcome people, but make sure they have to obey the laws of the country that they're going into. The president's immigration plan is very balanced and is saving us from criminals and people with kind of, who knows what kind of infectious diseases. You know, it makes me laugh how the left criticizes the president for taking a car ride, after he had a positive COVID-19 diagnosis. and Secret Service are there in protective equipment. They guard him all the time anyway. And they're making a big fuss about that. And they don't make a fuss about people just walking over the border, not being screened or tested for infectious diseases, and bringing God knows what kind of disease into our communities. Historic reform, the border wall, reducing drug trafficking and drug cartels. And do you know that he's dismantled 3,000 drug trafficking organizations, not people, organizations. Taken 500,000 criminals that were not supposed to be in our country and gotten them out of the country, including 20,000 violent gang members. I mean, you talk about Catholic values, Christian values. It's ridiculous to say, oh, well, he committed a sin 20 years ago. And compare that to, he's actually doing more now than any other president has done to keep our families safe from violent criminals who couldn't care less about what's a sin and what's not. They're vicious, violent people that he has, the numbers don't lie. People can look this up, go to the original sources. In fact, on that website there, prolifepresident.com, we've got the links. So again, in these conversations with people, take them beyond personalities, go to the policies. Lowest poverty level set in 17 years, more people lifted out of poverty, median household income raised under this president, more than under the previous two administrations. Human trafficking. The administration has done more on human trafficking than any other president. We know that's of great concern to the Holy Father and to the rest of the church. Look what he's done with Israel. Historic peace accord that hasn't been done in 25 years. Getting rid of the world's top 2 terrorists who are plotting violence against you and your families and churches and mine. And destroying the ISIS caliphate completely, 100%. Under Obama, Biden, nothing happened with that. ISIS is gone. It's gone. They don't have anything. They don't have as much as a square foot of property. The judges, over 230 federal judges that are going to uphold our religious freedom and the right to life. Not only the strongest economy, but the most inclusive economy. A plan to end HIV/AIDS epidemic within 10 years. More pro-life progress than ever before. Energy independence. I only remember growing up, as I'm sure many of you do, the Middle East, and we rely on them for the oil. No more. The VA. Look at how this president deals with fairness. The VA, there were 9,000 people that he made sure got fired from the Veterans Administration because they weren't doing their jobs the right way. They weren't treating the vets the right way. But there was a provision in place in the previous administration where they couldn't be fired. He changed that. Gave them VA choice, so they don't have to stand in line to get health care. They go to a doctor of their choice, government foots the bill. Price transparency, it's going to kick in January, but it's been already signed by him now. We shouldn't be surprised by medical expenses that we didn't know were there when we, agreed to have a certain procedure done. And on and on and on and on it goes. Let me give you a couple of recommendations, and I'll send this list, Joe, these follow-up messaging of things we can send you, books to read before Election Day. We only got 4 weeks, but these books are easy to read. The Catholic Case for Trump by Austin Ruse. I don't know if you've heard of this book, The Catholic Case for Trump by Austin Ruse. A Catholic Vote for Trump by Jesse Romero. The MAGA Doctrine by Charlie Kirk. Blitz by David Horowitz. Excellent book, Blitz. And For God and Country by Ralph Reed. These are just a few of the books that I really urge you and those that you are in contact with to obtain. The prayer campaign, electionprayer.com, or we can send you prayer cards. The party comparison piece, nonpartisan. It can be used by C3 organizations and churches, comparing the positions of the two parties. And then I'm sure as we do our questions, I can show you a few other resources that will help answer what your questions will be. But Joe, there's so many things, as you know, concrete tools that we want to give our leaders that are on this event with us tonight. Friends, this is where it's at. We're not here just to talk. We gotta work like crazy these next 4 weeks. Everything is on the line. Not just pro-life, everything is on the line that we believe in the church and as Americans. So Joe, thank you for pulling this together. I can't tell you how excited I am, because I know we got the cream of the crop here tonight. I know they're going to be responsive. And listen, let me finish before we go into the questions, just with this one sentence. The outcome of this election can depend just on the people on this call right now. That is no exaggeration.
Father, I love it. Thank you so much. We're going to jump right into the live question and answer session. Please, folks watching, chat your questions to us. There is a chat box on the main page right under this live video where you can simply just put your name in, send us your question. I want to start with a question from a Chad Griffin from the great state of Texas. Father, I chose this one because it actually helps us as Catholics. I'm Catholic, you're Catholic. Let's start by leading by example, right? This question kind of hit me in the heart, and I can't wait to hear you talk about it. Chad's question is, why do you think that the extremely pro-choice President Obama was able to capture more than 50% of the Catholic votes? And what can you say, Father, to those Catholics to reconsider from voting that way this time?
Well, first of all, we did not have, President we did not have the kind of fighter that we have now in President Trump. He has been so explicit right from the beginning about pro-life. You can't just say you're pro-life. You gotta lead with it. You gotta explain why, and he does that. He talks our language about it. President Obama's two opponents, they would have signed the right pro-life laws, but it's not like they were championing the cause. That's one of the reasons. And secondly, frankly, and it's one of the reasons for my ministry of Priests for Life, as many of you know, is that we're not talking about it enough as priests. And we are muzzled? We are afraid? We're not equipped. The more we talk about it, the more people vote pro-life. And so it's really very much a reflection on the church as well.
Great. Father, next question. If the wrong candidate gets in, this is a question more surrounding the open Justice Supreme Court seat. If the wrong candidate gets in, what does that mean for the fight for life? And what do you think the strategy would be to make sure this opportunity to overturn Roe v. Wade never happens again?
Well, we would have to really be, first of all, from day one, working to make sure that he's a one-term president. Okay, that's number one. We got to right away start working on the next election and working on the midterms. Now, a lot of it is going to depend on what happens with the Congress. It's not, you look at, okay, what if a Democrat wins the White House? But what about the House and the Senate? Now, either the House or the Senate being in Republican hands is, of course, a block. It's a check and balance against whatever the president might want to propose. But God forbid, if the House, the Senate, and the White House were all in Democrat hands, you know what would happen? They're floating ideas right now about, okay, well, you guys right now have, let's presume Amy Barrett gets in, which I think will happen before the election. They'll say, okay, well, we'll just add more seats to the court and fill them with Democrat-appointed justices, and we'll have a majority for a long time to come. Oh, and by the way, we have the Senate. Now we're going to keep the Senate because we're going to make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. into states and automatically add 4 more senators to the Senate, and they'll be all Democrat because that's the demographics of those 2 areas, and now they'll have a more solid majority in the Senate for years to come. And then, oh, and by the way, we're going to get rid of the legislative filibuster. Remember, I told you we need 60 votes to win with any kind of votes in the Senate. Well, they'll take that away, so it only requires 51. So they'll push through a radical agenda like we have never imagined. They're ready with a bill already to wipe away all the state restrictions on abortion, all of them. So I mean, we've not had a lot of progress on the federal level with pro-life legislation, but we have had a lot of progress on the state level. They'll wipe that all away. So again, it very much depends not just on who's in the White House, but who has control of both chambers of Congress.
Next question, Father, from a Shannon Norden. Thank you, Shannon. What do you tell a pro-life friend who isn't voting for the president because they don't like either candidate?
Well, you don't have to like either candidate. The fact of the matter is you have to ask if you like the policies and the direction the country's going to go. I could understand. In other words, affirm them. Say, okay, I can understand you don't like either one. It's not a matter of liking. Remember, the Catholic teaching is what's the common good. So again, what kind of judges, what kind of decisions are our grandchildren and great-grandchildren going to be reading about that are handed down by whatever judges the next president appoints? Are we going to have open borders? Or are we going to have secure borders? Are we going to have law and order? Or are we going to see police departments being defunded and dismantled? Are we going to follow the Constitution? Or are we going to follow just the culture? Are we going to have socialism? Does the church believe in socialism? Or do we believe America should never be a socialist country? Please, what we have to do is get their minds thinking, like we were saying before, about the bigger picture. What difference does it make whether I like the candidate? That I might not like my auto mechanic, but again, what I need at that moment, I don't need a friend. I need my car to work.
Right. Father, from a Warren Hunt, I've seen Warren actually send in a bunch of questions tonight. Thanks, Warren. Father, do you have any information available that folks can hand out at their parishes and get distributed?
Yes. Oh, and Joe, by the way, just let me interject here. You say Warren has a bunch of questions. I'm sure many questions that we won't have time to get to. I will be willing to answer each and every one of these questions. And Joe, we'll be in contact. You can let me see what all these questions are. And we have your emails, friends. We're going to get you the answers to all your questions. So let me just say that much. As I said at the beginning, this has got to be now, especially these next 4 weeks. We've got to work closely together. But yes, we have things to be given out in parishes. First of all, these prayer cards for the election, right down the hall from where I'm talking to you now. We've got stacks and stacks of these ready to be sent out tomorrow. And so if you go to electionprayer.com, you can order them and give them out at the parish. This party comparison piece that I mentioned too, one of our best resources, giving, again, in a neutral way, just the quotes from the various, on various issues, and it's in English and in Spanish on the other side. So these are two of the key things we recommend for the parishes. We have other kinds of brochures and booklets as well, which you can find at prolifeproducts.org. And finally, I'm also making a few other handouts. For example, this list of accomplishments that I was going through. I went through some of them, not all of them. Again, at prolifepresident.com, you can download and print those yourself, or we'll be happy to send you a supply of those. Those are great handouts too, that people can say, oh, look at, I didn't realize all these good things were being done. And that can help motivate them to vote the right way.
Father, we're getting a lot of questions regarding Trump's personality, which, know, from the media narrative, that's not a surprise. Maybe go back and touch on how to separate results from someone's personality. You know, when we're at our jobs, I'm sure people don't like someone because they wear the way their fashion is or the way they act, their personality, but they may be really good at their job. You know, Steve Jobs would be a great example. You talk to anyone that worked for the guy, he was a tough dude to deal with, but he changed the world and he obviously was great at his job. You know, it's one of them, many examples in my head. What would you say to folks when it comes to what the president has done versus how he may act or how he may put people off, etc.?
Well, first of all, listen. First of all, let's think about this as Catholics, as Christians. First of all, the Catechism says we must not judge. Rash judgment is wrong, right? Slander and calumny, making up lies about somebody and passing them along, is wrong. And so is a detraction. Even if someone has a fault, you know, go in making it a topic of gossip. Now, I'm not saying you're doing any of those things. I'm saying that the president is subject to this day in and day out from his enemies, from the Democrats, and from the mainstream media. And I say this to you again, not because I think you're doing it, but because I can assure you. Now listen, I'm privileged to know the president and a lot of people that work very closely with him. I speak every day with people who are working closely with this president. And I can assure you, and my own personal encounters with him have confirmed this, that the graciousness, the kindness, the humility of this man are terribly underestimated by the public, even by his supporters. This man is kind and generous. He goes out of his way. I was just talking, for example, today with one of his key campaign staffers, and he said, hey, you know, the president, I talked to him over the weekend, even while he was at Walter Reed, and, you know, here he is, you know, battling this virus and has got so much on his mind. And yet the first thing when I got on the phone with him to talk about the campaign was he was asking me about my children and how they were all doing and were they all safe, and not just asking in a perfunctory way, but going on and on about it. Someone I know from New York, a police officer who helped Donald Trump before he became a candidate, had a flat tire on the highway. Trump was so grateful. He said to the man, you know, how can I help you? He ended up paying his mortgage. His respect for women. I know women that work with him, and you know, he was in a situation where somebody was a woman came up that was so happy to meet him and so forth, and she said, oh, can I give you a hug? And you know, and he said, Melania said that would be okay, you know, and you know, there's that sense of gentlemanly virtue. Let me tell you something. If you listen to his speech and you say, oh, I don't know, I don't like how he said that. You know, first of all, you know, people talk about his personality. Ask them to be specific. What exactly is it that you object to? Oh, I don't like if he calls people names. Okay, but again, listen. Our weaknesses are our strengths. He knows how to fight back. Remember, people are attacking him, not because of anything personal to him. People are attacking him because they're attacking you and me, and our values, and our pro-life stance, and our church, and America. They're attacking us. He fights back. When you have a real fighting personality, there's an aggressiveness to that sometimes also spills over into, maybe I wouldn't have been so rough in the way I said. What matters more? That he gets the job done? He stands up. Look what he did with China. North Korea. Obama said to him, can't do anything with North Korea. It's an unsolvable problem. And he said, hey, did you ever sit down and talk with the guy? And he started negotiating with him. And, you know, he had to walk away from the negotiations at one point, but he's a tough negotiator. And look, there's no war with North Korea like some people thought he would get us in. Oh, he's a rough personality. He's going to get us into war with North Korea. Exactly the opposite happened. We've never made more progress with that country. China. He was told, you can't even promise any trade negotiations with China. They won't do it. And they were ripping us off of tens of billions of dollars. Now it's the other way around. They are buying tens of billions of dollars of our products. Why? Because this man, with a strong attitude, went face to face with those Chinese leaders, and he pulled off a trade negotiation that's now benefiting us and our families. So, Joe, it's like, you know, these are just some. If people would read those books that I recommended, you'll see example after example of all these things.
We're going to post the books Father recommended on the main page, which you're watching right now, also on the Catholic Speakers Facebook page, etc., and all our social media. Father, and just a kind note to everyone watching, we do realize we're going over time. We have Father Pavone, his attention, he's in his zone, so I don't want to cut that off. I'm going to let him cut me off. We're going to go about 5 or 10 minutes extra. Of course, you're free to leave if you'd like. We want to thank everyone that has joined. If you want to stick around for the extra, please do. Question again, Father. We are getting questions pouring in. You must have did a great job with your presentation tonight. The question from Champa. Father, my Democratic Catholic family members say that the Republican Party is pro-death penalty. How shall I answer that?
Well, I wouldn't say that the party is as solidly pro-death penalty as the Democrat Party is pro-abortion, but you know there are candidates. I know a lot of Republicans that are against the death penalty, and it's not like they're going on some crusade, you know, saying, "Hey, let's have more executions." It's not like that at all. What I would say to them is, look, we know what we believe as Catholics, that we want the death penalty abolished. Okay, yes, but we also understand it's not the same kind of problem as abortion. And our choice in the election it doesn't mean that the candidate has to match up to every Catholic teaching. You know, many Republicans, candidates and office holders, many are Catholic, but many are not. It's not that they have to hold up to every one of these teachings. It's that our choice is not between, you know, what we have and what we would consider to be the ideal. Our choice is between A and B, a party that, yes, they will show some support for the death penalty, but in comparison to a party that is pushing, advocating for, asking us to pay for, and expanding and taking away every restriction, not from the killing of the guilty, but from the killing of the innocent. And you know, one of the helpful statistics here, to put it in perspective for people, is that we in our country kill more children by abortion. Ready for this? It's an easy to remember statistic. More children are killed by abortion in one day than all the executions by capital punishment since it was restored in 1976. Let that sink in for a moment. Since 1976 till today, fewer deaths by capital punishment than by abortion of one single day. Now, that's not to say that these human lives aren't important, but remember, the death penalty's purpose is the protection of life. Now, the reason the church is saying that it should be abolished is that we have other ways of protecting the community from the criminal, violent criminal who's not reforming. We have other ways to protect the community from them. So why kill them? But the fact of the matter is a very big difference between executing the guilty for protecting life by the authority of the state and executing the innocent by the authority of an individual for whatever reason they want. They don't even have to have a reason. So those are some of the, but I think the bottom line thing here is this. I have to deal with the real choice in front of me, not comparing it to an ideal, but comparing it to the alternative, which is far worse.
Thank you, Father. Can you hear me? Sorry, Father, a little glitch there. The only one we've had all night. We wanted people to ponder that last point, though. We got a couple more questions. Debbie Brooks, how do you respond to someone that says, I have a hard time believing Trump is pro-life considering the cages at the border? Now, Father, we're purposely picking hot topics that we all know have been said. So we're going to start filtering out questions by hitting these topics that everyone has heard and want to get your opinion on that. So again, this is more if you want to go into the immigration issue, and then that question itself, the cages at the border that Trump puts kids in. I'm sure you've heard this a lot. How can he be pro-life? Yeah. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, we do hear this a lot, and it's a myth. It's a myth. What cages? You ask people, what do you mean by a cage? Now, if you go to your local elementary school, I'm thinking now of the one I went to, public school. What does the playground look like? Does it have one of those, you know, chain link fences around it you can see through? Obviously, you can see through it. Is the playground of the children enclosed by one of those linked fences? Is that a cage? Friends, basically, first of all, we have to take a step back. Remember we talked about rash judgment a moment ago, and I said this is the most common sin committed against the president? This is a rash judgment based on erroneous information. And we can fix it very easily. Just Google, you know, cages at the border, President Trump, President Obama. What's the truth? Okay, the truth of the matter is this. President Obama set up these facilities, first of all. It wasn't President Trump that started it. Obama did. But they're not cages. Cages, why are people using that word? That implies, you know, your dog is in his cage, you know, little confined space, you know, he's not free to go out. Listen, the reality is we got children being brought across the border, often not with their families. And they come across, and there's a provision that the Department of Health and Human Services needs to make provision for them, but within like 72 hours, what are you gonna do? Set them loose on the streets of El Paso? Well, you got to keep them safe, right? Okay, so where are you going to keep them safe? Well, the people who are in charge of the facilities that were built, there are these big rooms as big as this studio here that I'm in. And around at the perimeter of the room, there's fences that you can see through. Why? So first of all, so that the kids are separated from complete strangers. Otherwise, the accusation would be, oh, they're subjecting them to potential abuse. And secondly, so that the people guarding and taking care of the facility can see them. You can't put them in a room with walls. You got to be able to see what's going on. They're not cages. They're rooms that have these fences, and Obama set them up. So it is so completely unfair of people to talk this way about President Trump. Now, I'll be glad, Joe, when we send the follow-up information to our friends who are with us tonight, I'm going to send you some links to some articles that you can share with your friends and set them straight. And see, it's got to go back to fairness. It's like, look, are we talking about this because we heard it on MSNBC? Or are we talking about this in a way that we're informed by the facts? There have been hearings in the United States Congress about this. And the people in charge, the good people, these are good, decent people, many of them Catholics, who are taking care of these situations at the border. And they have the greatest respect and love for families, children, immigrants, as does the president. And I'm going to tell you, they are doing their best to take care of a very difficult situation. And when people complain, final point, Joe, I got to laugh to myself when people say, oh, they're separating children from their parents. Well, maybe the parents should have thought twice before breaking the law and trying to get into this country illegally. When we provide an open door to do it legally, and you break the law, there's going to be consequences. And since if God forbid somebody commits a crime and the police have to come and arrest them, and they have children at home, since when does the child go with the parent who's under arrest and go with the police officer? So we got to look at these things in the bigger picture.
All right, Father, thank you. We have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. One question from Jason Percival in the great state of Ohio. Father, he wants to know, what response would you recommend for those who call you racist for supporting the current president?
The president is not a racist. I would first of all challenge them to show us one policy or one thing he has done or thing he has said that shows he's a racist. You can remind them, Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King Jr., she knows what racism is when she sees it. She's part of our team here at Priests for Life, a very strong supporter of President Trump, and very, very angry that they use this term racist. Listen, all the past Republican candidates and presidents, they've been called racist. Donald Trump was never considered a racist or called one until he became a Republican candidate. It's a tactic of the other side. They call us racist for being pro-life. You've heard that if you go on a pro-life demonstration, you'll hear the chants, if there's pro-abortion demonstrators there, calling you and me racist. Well, they have absolutely no evidence. There's a website. Let me go to the board here again, and we'll switch the camera view. There's a website I want to refer you to. Still Not Racist. .com. There's a couple of videos that you'll see there showing the president, and how you can counteract this. And by the way, look what he's done. If he's a racist, he's one of the worst people at being able to do that than we've ever seen. What he's done for the black community is incredible. He just released the Platinum Plan. Take a look at it. He made permanent the funding for the historically black colleges and universities. He passed the First Step Act. Other presidents talked about it. Obama didn't get it done. First Step Act, prison reform, lowering prison sentences, helping black men in prison to get reintegrated with their families, lowest unemployment in the African American community, the Asian American community, the Hispanic community. Latinos love Trump. His support among the Latino community, among the black community, is higher than any Republican candidate has ever gotten. So this is just, frankly, let me go back here. Frankly, it's a lot of garbage when people are saying that he or we who support him are racist. There's no evidence for it. Some of the things that the president has said and done have been so twisted by the media, like this comment from Charlottesville. I mean, this is just a sham. Candidate Biden said it again just last night. He said there were good people on both sides. No, the president has condemned white supremacists. And what he was talking about when the Charlottesville riots were going on back at the beginning of his term, and he said there's good people on both sides, he was referring to the peaceful protesters. This was in, the controversy over the statue of Robert E. Lee. He was talking about the peaceful protesters as good people on both sides. A good person recognizes when there's good people on both sides, but he condemned, and as always condemned, racism, both in word and in action.
Father, thank you so much. We got our final question here, and I want everyone to know we've probably received I don't know how many questions from all the various platforms, but we'll try and answer and get an answer from Father for everyone. We'll post them on the website, our social media. You'll get access to all the books he recommended, and as well as the links. Father, if you could close out on, again, emphasizing why this election is probably one of the most important of our lifetime when it comes to fighting for life with the open Justice Supreme Court seat. But also, it was interesting with all the questions coming in. We're going to paraphrase this. For the first time, at least that I can remember, both candidates have already showed their hand when it comes to pro-life. We have 4 years of Trump and 8 years of Biden. So how would you recommend for Catholics to separate the wheat from the shaft when both candidates are claiming to be Christian or a Christian Catholic?
Not those who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my heavenly Father. And there are so many other scriptures, as my friends, you all know, as good followers of the Lord Jesus, that, the Lord looks at deeds, not at words. The deeds are what matter. And under Biden, and both by the deeds and also by his promises, abortion without limit. He made it clear again last night in the town hall that he did. No limits. Kamala Harris is even worse. And because she's the most liberal member of the Senate, not by opinion, but by GovTrack. GovTrack is by objective criteria, how they vote, how they sponsor things. It gives them a rating, ideological rating. She's to the left of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Pro-abortion to the max. Look, the point is, again, go back to the accomplishments, number one. So prolifepresident.com, you'll see the list of accomplishments. We've got to get people looking at the track record. I'd like to see the list of Biden's accomplishments. I haven't seen it. It ought to be 10 times longer than that of President Trump because he's been in federal office 10 times longer. But the list isn't there. Second thing is, I know that many of you are on Twitter and Instagram. There's an account I want to invite you to follow, Team Trump. Now, the reason I want you to follow that account is that all of these excellent questions, because we're all going to get in these next 4 weeks, more of these slings and arrows, and they're attacks on us. The attacks on Trump are attacks on us. They know that he stands for our values, right? We got to be able to answer them. And if you want to know the facts, you'll get little quick videos. You'll see responses to things like the charge of racism and this and that and the other thing. Team Trump. Follow that on Twitter. Follow that on Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's Official Team Trump. That's the address on Facebook. Official Team Trump. You will be connected and you will be empowered, because I want to bring this right back to the main point. We can have theoretical conversations all day long. But right now, my friends, people are voting right now. We need you to get these messages to your groups. If you head up a group, the purpose of us bringing you together tonight was to equip and motivate you starting right now. No, can't wait till next week. Starting right now. Send messaging out to your groups. We'll send you sample emails. You can share these tweets and things you see on Team Trump. And get people out to the polls. This is the urgent thing. What's counted on election night is not opinions. It's not the number of dollars that were raised. It's not the answers to the opinion polls. Only one thing is counted on election night, and that's votes. Votes that are actually cast. That's the whole ball game right there. And what's at stake is not just pro-life, it's America as we know it. It's whether this is going to be a socialist country. And so you can make the difference right now. It's no exaggeration. Those of us that came together tonight, and thank you, Joe, again for agreeing to do this, I'm utterly convinced the whole outcome of this election can be in the hands of just those that are listening right now. So please, the main thing here is every single day between now and election day, put aside as much as you can put off until after election day. I've done this in my own schedule. Everything is being put off till November 4th. Now, people are different in what they're able to do, but every hour that you can possibly give to reaching others, starting, remember, with those who know you and trust you. If you lead a ministry, those are people are listening to you. We've got to mobilize these voters. We've got to do it now. It's a numbers game. We're running against the clock. And this is the most, Joe, as you said, consequential election in our history for pro-life, for the freedom of the church, and for America as we know it.
Father Frank Pavone, God bless you for all the work you do over there at Priests for Life. Thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you for being the catalyst to get this started. And it was an honor for us to host this forum tonight and allow you to have a platform to tell and inform everyone. We've all learned so much. God bless you, and thanks for your time.
God bless. May I give a blessing for everybody?
Absolutely. Or actually, if you would say a prayer for everyone on here.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. Lord, thank you for these ministries. Thank you for those on this call tonight who are priests and deacons. We honor them. We reverence their vocation. Thank you for Joe and for the CatholicSpeakers.com. Thank you for all the speakers associated with that network who have joined us tonight, Lord, that they may have words in these coming weeks to inspire their audiences to participate in this election. Lord, that the clergy may have words to preach to help with this election. And Lord, that you would bless each of us to give what we can give and have the influence we can have. But Lord, above all, we want to ask for your protection on our families. Lord, bless all those on here who are parents. Bless all of our work. Lord, bless all of our problems that they may be solved by the grace of your Spirit, and bless all of us moving forward. Give us your peace, give us your joy as we do your work, and give us your blessing. May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father, so much. We'll end up wrapping it up here. Thank you, all of you, for joining in tonight and watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Please donate if you feel like called to give us money to put out speakers like Father Frank Pavone, Teresa Tomeo, Jeannie Mancini. Proceeds will go to supporting getting them out and speaking about pro-life between now and the election. We are on a very short timeline, so please help us out to get these messages out. I want to thank all three presenters tonight for doing this with us, and we hope you learned something. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining. And please stay in touch. Sign up on CatholicSpeakers.com or sign up on the main page for the Election Truth. Good night.